I was still holding my bouquet when my phone buzzed. The message lit up the screen like a flare across calm waters. "You're fired. Consider it my gift to you." No subject, no context, just that. From Lena Dorrance, the new vice president of operations, daughter of the man who had once called me the engine under the hood of his company. I stared at the message, blinking as if by sheer will I could change what it said. I should have felt panic, or rage, or humiliation, but what I felt first was cold, almost clinical disbelief. I turned to Gavin, still in his tailored navy suit, still holding my hand with that maddening steadiness. I passed him the phone. He read the message once, then again. No change in his expression. Then he smiled, a slow, knowing smile, not smug, but deeply amused. He leaned in, kissed my knuckles, and whispered, "Let her give gifts. Ours is coming." The church doors opened. A swell of sunlight and applause greeted us. Someone threw white rose petals. Cameras flashed. I tucked the phone into the folds of my clutch and walked forward. I walked forward because if I paused, if I let that message settle in my bones, I might not make it down the steps. I smiled for the guests. I laughed when someone shouted, "You look radiant." But inside, everything in me had gone razor sharp. Lena didn't just fire me. She fired me on my wedding day. She wanted this to be the moment I would never forget for all the wrong reasons. She thought she'd caught me vulnerable, off guard. But I wasn't alone. Not anymore. 3 hours later, in the middle of our reception, my maid of honor would come running with a pale face and a phone in her hand. And that would be the moment I realized Lena had just started a fire she couldn't control. I had just slipped off my heels under the sweetheart table when Nia, my maid of honor, appeared at my side, breathless. She didn't say a word, just held out my phone. The screen was lit up with notifications. 108 missed calls. I scrolled. A blur of names, colleagues, assistants, project managers. But what made my breath catch were the 31 calls from Miles Dorrance. I knew every digit of his number without checking. I tapped the voicemail icon. His voice poured through the tiny speaker, tight with urgency. "Celia? I didn't authorize this. Lena acted on her own. We need you. Paris operations are frozen. No one can access your system. Please call me back." I clicked the next one. "We can't reach the compliance logs. Clients are threatening to withdraw. If you hear this, please respond immediately." And another. "I'm sorry. I was wrong to let her push you out. I stopped listening." The reception music continued, light and elegant in the background. Gavin was laughing with his best man near the bar, completely at ease. People toasted, danced, passed around mini creme brulee. I stared at the phone in my hand, the calls still coming, the device vibrating against my skin like a frantic pulse. They were unraveling. Without me. The systems I'd built over 2 years' architecture operations, international compliance data, layering permission structures weren't just functional, they were integral. And Lena had pulled me out like a keystone. I powered the phone off, tucked it into my clutch, and stood. From across the room, Gavin met my gaze. He tilted his head slightly like he already knew. I walked toward him barefoot now, wedding dress, trailing behind me, calm as glass. They'd built their strategy on arrogance, but I had built something else. 2 years ago, I sat across from Miles Dorrance in his glass-walled office while he scrawled bullet points on a legal pad like a man chasing a vision. He'd just returned from Zurich, furious that a last-minute client request had been lost in an outdated filing system. "Fix it," he said simply. "All of it." I did. In 8 months, I rebuilt the operational core of Dorrance Atelier from scratch, designed a proprietary backend with tiered permissions, built-in audit trails, encrypted compliance triggers. I tied workflows across design, permitting, billing, and intercontinental logistics into a single scalable interface. They called it the Heron Spine, unofficially, of course. Officially, it was called Legacy Ops. That name came from Lena. Lena had walked into a team review meeting 3 weeks after her promotion and smiled like we were all interns. She glanced at my roadmap, skimmed the key integration sequence, then dismissed the entire structure as overbuilt. It's useful, she'd said, but let's modernize the narrative. We'll just call this legacy operations support. She didn't even look at me. What she never grasped, what she couldn't see behind her curated slide decks and hollow performance metrics, was that this system didn't just track things, it anticipated them. It was intelligent by design, and it needed human calibration mine. While she branded herself as transformational leadership, I was 3 steps ahead, embedding safeguards she didn't know existed. Every shortcut she took triggered silent markers. Every override attempt required authentication she couldn't fake. And when she removed me, she thought she could reroute the machine. But I wasn't a gear in the system. I was the spine. And now that she'd broken it, every department was falling numb. I didn't need to fight for my position. I had already hardwired my presence into the bones of the company. By the time Gavin and I boarded the plane the next morning, I'd already received 6 more messages from Miles. But I wasn't planning to respond. Not yet. It started with a conversation over dinner. Gavin had set down his wine glass mid-sentence eyes, narrowing at something in the back of his mind. Lena's travel expenses. He said, almost to himself. Something doesn't line up. At the time, I waved it off. Executives always move fast and loose with policy, especially when their last name matched the company's sign. But Gavin wasn't speculating. He'd seen it before. That pattern. He didn't push it then. Didn't tell me he'd already flagged 3 anomalies in vendor routing and 2 inconsistent timestamps on internal reviews. He knew I was exhausted. We were days away from launching the Paris redevelopment file, my biggest deliverable to date. He let me finish the project, let me breathe. And then, one quiet Sunday morning, he showed me what he'd compiled. Dozens of screenshots, exported ledger comparisons, metadata, approval sequences that had been rearranged post-signature, digital footprints that led back to Lena's office login. The gaps weren't just technical, they were ethical breaches hidden inside the folds of her efficiency updates. I stared at the folder in silence. It felt like betrayal, but it also felt like confirmation. She's not just reckless, Gavin said gently. She's masking it with confidence and trying to outpace the audit cycle. And you've been tracking this. He hesitated, then nodded. I didn't know if I'd need it. But if she ever came for you, I wanted you armed. We didn't bring it to Miles. Not yet. We saved it, secured it under an encrypted lock system only the 2 of us could access. Protocol Eclipse. That's what we called it. Not a weapon, not a threat. Just a quiet contingency. Something we hoped we'd never have to use. And then 2 months later, I stood in a wedding dress, reading a message that told me exactly why we'd built it. In Kyoto, time slowed. We stayed in a quiet machiya, tucked behind a bamboo alleyway where the floor creaked just enough to remind you it was older than your grief. Gavin and I walked without destination, ate without urgency, and didn't mention Dorrance for the first 2 days. But my phone kept buzzing. Even on silent mode, I could feel its weight like a pocketful of static against my thigh. By day 3, the tone of Miles's messages had shifted. The offers started modest return as interim lead, same salary, same office. Then they escalated. Double pay, flexible schedule, remote options. Finally, on the 5th night, Gavin opened an email while we sat on tatami mats with green tea cooling between us. 7-figure proposal, he murmured, scrolling. Full control over European ops. Direct report to board only. I didn't ask to see it. I just folded a paper crane from the edge of a map and dropped it in his lap. Tell him we're unavailable. He didn't. He just smiled, folded the crane tighter. The next morning, we wandered through a temple garden, littered in petals, soft wind, brushing past stone lanterns and worn prayer ropes. Gavin snapped a photo of me mid-laugh, then paused. They're going to burn the whole thing down trying to prove they don't need you. I glanced at the koi pond. Let them. On our final evening, just before dusk, we sat on a veranda that overlooked the city. Cherry blossoms drifted down like confetti from a quieter celebration. Gavin reached for my hand, laced his fingers with mine. You've already won, you know. Not yet, I said. He turned to me. I met his gaze. I want to see how far they'll fall before they realize where the floor used to be. When we boarded the flight home the next morning, I powered my phone back on. It pinged 46 times in the first minute. 2 days after we landed, I received an email with no subject line and an address I didn't recognize. Celia, I thought you should know. The Paris site halted work yesterday. Structural misalignment. Load-bearing support doesn't match approved specs. They use the modified plans. The ones Lena pushed through without recertification. No one can find the originals. The city is threatening to pull the license. Be careful, no signature. But I recognized the tone measured worried. It was Ellis, one of my old interns. Quiet, observant, painfully meticulous. The kind you hope the industry doesn't ruin too fast. I read the message twice, then forwarded it to Gavin without comment. He was in the kitchen setting down a mug when his phone buzzed. He opened the email, scanned it, and let out a low exhale. Not just trouble, he said quietly. This is liability. Civil, possibly criminal if they move forward. Someone could get hurt. I sat at the dining table staring at the spot where the contract blueprints should have gone if they'd followed protocol. Lena had done more than push me out. She had erased the guardrails I'd built, overridden approvals, compressed lead times, signed off on modifications post-engineering review, without telling the client or the city. She wasn't just negligent, she was reckless, and now they were standing on ground that could crack. I opened a folder on my desktop Protocol Eclipse and cross-checked the time-stamped logs Gavin had collected. There it was. A recorded entry from 6 weeks ago, file substitution, plan variant 7.2b Lena's credentials. No backtrail, no notes. A bypassed compliance flag that had never reached the Paris team. They were building on lies. I reached for my phone. Not to call anyone, just to look at the last voicemail from Miles. We can't find the originals. We're frozen. I pressed play. His voice cracked on the word please. I listened once, then again. Then closed the app and sat back, hands folded. They had no plans, no backups, no system. They had burned their bridges, and they were about to discover who had built them in the first place. The conference room smelled like old wood and panic. Miles was already seated when I walked in, his tie-loosened hands folded tightly on the table. He stood as I entered, trying to recover some semblance of poise. Then I saw Lena. She was standing by the window, arms crossed, jaw locked. Her lipstick looked freshly reapplied, but her hands trembled just slightly at her sides. She didn't greet me. I didn't greet her either. Miles gestured toward the chair across from him. Celia, thank you for coming. I know things got out of hand. I sat down, laid my bag beside me, and said nothing. I'm not going to waste time, he continued. The Paris office is stalled. The council is threatening to blacklist us. You know how delicate those licenses are. We need you back, in any capacity you're comfortable with. Salary, title, whatever it takes. Lena shifted. This doesn't have to be dramatic, she snapped. We can fix this together. I turned to her. You tried to erase me. That wasn't an accident. She didn't respond. I reached into my bag and slid a sealed cream envelope across the table. Miles stared at it like it might explode. These are my terms, I said. They're not open for discussion. He opened the envelope slowly. His eyes scanned the page. Independent consultancy, not employment. Immediate resignation of Lena from all executive duties. Unrestricted access to systems files and personnel for oversight and audit. He looked up. This is complete control. No, I said evenly. This is stability. This is survival. Lena scoffed, stepping forward. You think you can just waltz in, and Miles raised a hand. Lena, she stopped. I watched his face, the conflict, the calculation, the recognition. You'll have an answer by morning, he said at last. I stood, nodded once, and left the envelope on the table. By the time I reached the elevator, I had no doubt. The only question left was whether Miles would choose his company or the woman who nearly destroyed it? That night, Gavin and I sat across from each other in the kitchen, the kind of quiet between us that didn't come from anger, but from something weightier. He watched me stir a second cup of tea I wasn't drinking. Finally, he said, "There's something I didn't tell you." I looked up. "Lena came to see me," he continued, voice low. 3 weeks before the wedding. She tracked me down after a permit board meeting, said she admired my work, wanted to bring me on as a lead advisor for some future international board. He paused. Then she said she'd need me to overlook a few inconsistencies, things that weren't technically criminal, just expedient, she called them. I set the spoon down gently. "She tried to buy your silence." "Yes. And you didn't think I needed to know." His jaw tensed. "I didn't want to ruin your focus. You were already under pressure, and I thought if she pulled something, we'd be ready. We had protocol eclipse. I was protecting you." I stared at him. Not angry, not betrayed, just tired. "You should have told me," I said quietly. "I wanted you to win clean," he replied. "I just didn't expect her to strike first." That landed. He wasn't wrong, but he wasn't entirely right either. I'd spent years navigating rooms full of subtle threats. I didn't need a shield. I needed a partner who trusted me with the truth, even the ugly parts, especially those. Still, I reached for his hand, not out of forgiveness, but because I knew we were still on the same side. Mostly. "Do you think Miles will accept the terms Gavin asked?" I nodded. "He will. Not because he wants to, because he has no choice." We sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the fridge the only sound between us. Then I stood, opened my laptop, and pulled up the client-side portal I'd disabled 2 months ago. I reactivated the access channel. Just one. Miles would find it waiting for him in the morning, and the next step would be his to take. I was reviewing updated specs for the downtown Seattle renovation when the doorbell rang, sharp, urgent, then immediately apologetic. I opened it to find Imani Rowe wrapped in a long gray coat, eyes darting behind her, as if she wasn't sure she should have come. I hadn't seen her since the week Lena took over. We stood there for a beat. She held a worn leather satchel against her chest, like it might break. "Do you have a minute?" she asked, voice thinner than I remembered. I stepped aside. She didn't sit right away, just stood in the center of the room, shifting her weight until I broke the silence. "You stayed." She nodded once. "I thought I could do more from the inside. Did you?" She looked down. "No. I waited. I helped her," she said quietly. "Lena. She told me to route the rendering straight to Paris. No review queue, no secondary cert. She said the changes were minor and the delays were costing the firm millions. She said it was about speed." "And you believed her?" "I wanted to," she admitted. "I was tired of feeling like a junior in every room, even when I knew more than the men presenting." She gave me approval, a title, a seat at the table. I just didn't realize the table was hollow. She finally sat. Her bag made a heavy thump on the floor. When Paris halted work, she continued. I pulled the final submission log. There were changes, structural ones, floor plates, wall reinforcements, tension modifiers. I didn't see it until after. Imani opened the satchel and handed me a flash drive. "This has the final renderings and a transcript of Lena's override emails." I didn't know where else to take it. I took the drive, turned it over in my fingers, and looked at her. She didn't look defiant. She looked like someone carrying the weight of someone else's ambition. "I'm not going to scold you," I said. "You already know what happened." Her eyes started to fill. I thought I'd ruined everything. "No," I said. "You came back." She wiped her cheek. "What do you want me to do?" I stood and reached for a folder on the shelf, an old systems index I hadn't touched in over a year. "You still remember how the compliance nodes work?" She nodded. "Good," I said, placing it in front of her. "Then help me fix it for everyone else." As she opened the folder, hands steadier than before, I turned back to my laptop and pulled up the Paris contract file. Miles had taken the offer. Now it was time to begin the real work. The agreement was signed on a Monday. No announcement, no press release, just a quiet upload to a shared portal, a digital signature from Miles, and a new tab added to the Clarity Engine internal dashboard, Dorrance Atelier Full Oversight. The email that followed from corporate communications read, "Ms. Lena Dorrance has stepped down from her executive role due to personal health matters. We thank her for her contributions." It didn't mention the damage or the risk she'd introduced, or the walls we were still reinforcing in 3 countries because of her shortcuts. But that didn't matter. My name wasn't in the statement either. I didn't want it to be. In the weeks that followed, Imani moved into my home office and never really left. She was different now, more methodical, less eager to please. She asked questions she used to hesitate over, and when she didn't know something, she said so, out loud, with no shame. We rewrote protocol stacks together, reconstructed the compliance engine in layers, and sent the first real-time audit report to Paris within 10 days. The site was stable again. I flew there quietly. No welcome tour, no cameras, just me, a clipboard, and a walkthrough with the foreman, who looked surprised to see the consultant personally checking the anchoring plates. Back in Seattle, I took meetings late and reviewed blueprints until the city lights blurred into static. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel much at all. Then one afternoon, a writer from an architecture industry publication asked for an interview. I declined twice. She persisted politely, so I agreed on one condition: no photos. She asked me about the collapse, about what it felt like to be erased, then returned. Is this revenge? She finally asked Penn, poised. I looked at her for a long moment, then said, "No, I don't burn bridges. I build structures that last longer than ego." She blinked, then scribbled it down like gospel. After she left, I sat in the silence for a while, not planning the next move, not orchestrating, just breathing. Gavin came home late that night with takeout and a copy of the city's new zoning revisions. "Want to see what they're doing near the waterfront?" I nodded. The work wasn't over, but for the first time, I wasn't climbing. I was anchoring.